Well, we're almost done with the Summer of Grace. We've been going a sermon series all through the summer called the Summer of Grace. And for the working definition of grace, we've got, grace is God loving us. God can say, I love you, and you can say you love your husband or wife or children, but when you actually show love to them, so loving. So that is God showing love to us, we've been using as a definition of grace. Last week we talked about how grace is God's protection. We talked about how grace is for all, and how grace is creation, and grace is new beginnings, and grace is so many different things. This week we're going to talk about grace is God's presence, and next week we're going to wrap it all up with, so what? So what does it all mean? But today, God says in Jeremiah, am I not a nearby God? Am I a far off God? God is saying, am I not here? Am I not among you? Am I not present? Am I not close? And I think we have all had moments in our lives, I hope you have, where you have in some way felt the presence of God. The holy moments of life. Those are a gift. To actually feel the presence of God on you, with you, are a gift. And that is grace. I've had the pleasure of experiencing God's presence a few times recently. On Friday, I was out at Via de Cristo. Via de Cristo weekend is going on right now. A couple of our members are there. And I was out there Friday, and I was out there, and I heard that one of my friends, Vicky, who I had worked with on the weekend previous, her mother had just passed away. And so they asked us to pray. And so, being the only pastor in the group, they all looked at me. And so, all right. If you haven't noticed, if you've been out with me in public, and when I'm asked to pray in public, it's kind of one of the things that I'm working on. I pray a lot at home, but I'm used to praying silently. And when I pray silently, I don't worry about saying anything stupid. Because nobody hears it except for God and I don't think God cares. And so when I pray in public for like Bible studies and that kind of thing, I try and keep them short. I've always been told to be wary of those with long prayers. And so I keep them short. But when we were at Via de Cristo, and hearing that Vicky's mother had died, it was just one of those prayers that came from the soul that just glowed. I would start sentences and not know how it was going to end. And it was just this long prayer that I felt just came from I don't know where. But as I was praying, we were there in a circle, I could actually feel it right now. This just like the hairs on the back of my neck just stand up, and I just feel the presence of God surround me. And it's just, I didn't expect to feel it right now, but it's just an incredible feeling to feel God's presence, to feel God's arms around me. And I don't think we can ever feel that too much. Had a number of experiences. I'm going to share an experience with you because you're going to hear about it anyway. And I thought the best way to do it is in the sermon. Many of you know the story that 3 years ago, on August 15, 2010, we had our first worship service here when it was a school, Highland Meadows Montessori Academy. And Pat was running the school, and she'd been doing so for almost 30 years. And so she was so gracious to us when we first came, and so hospitable. Said, yeah, sure, you guys can use it on Sundays. And we were so nervous. Do we have to be out by noon? Can we stay till 12:15? At the very beginning, it was so, so new, so exciting. And then about 9 months later, Pat came to us and said that she was, they decided the school was going to close, and then the property would be for sale. And you've all heard this story. We went through our due diligence. We did a capital campaign, and we went to Pat and said, this is what we can afford. She said, okay. And that was just the whole process, just being an incredible experience, a faith-building experience, and an affirming experience for this church. Recently, Pat and Cecil sat down with myself and Phil Hart and said that we're dissolving our school now. We're finally going through the process. And we found out that we can actually, the money that we have left over, we can give to another 501c3. And immediately I got the chills. And so she pulled out a check and gave it to us for $75,000. in that moment you could feel God. You could feel God say, I love what you're doing as a church. And so I did what anyone would do in that moment. I got up and walked out of the room. It was just such a powerful moment that I didn't know how to respond. So thank you. These powerful, holy moments that continue to happen, where we can feel the presence of God in our lives, is grace. Now you may be saying, well, I've never felt an experience like that. Why hasn't God shown up in my life like that? Lutherans would say, here's some Lutheran theology. Here's the start of confirmation. Confirmation starts in a month, but we'll start it today. Is what we call the means of grace, where we say there are times where God promises to be there. There are times where God will be there. The means of grace, holy moments, holy things. Actually, the way we translate the word sacrament is holy thing. And so God promises to be with us in the sacraments. We all know the sacraments, right? Holy Communion and baptism. For Lutherans. I know there's some previous Catholics in the congregation. Wait a second. We only have two. Communion and baptism. And so when we come forward, and Jesus says this in the Gospel today in John, I am the bread of life. He who eats of my flesh will live forever. And so we take that seriously. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And so we say, we should have communion every Sunday. Because we should eat of the bread of life every Sunday. And so we have communion every Sunday. We believe that whenever we have communion, Christ is present with us. That Jesus is with us right here. And I don't know if when you reach your hand out and the bread goes in your hand, if you feel that, the presence of God on you or not. But He's there. That's what we believe. Not only that, though, but we're pointing to something so beautiful. The sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross. That's what it says in Hebrews today, that He took His shame to the cross. We're pointing to the death of Jesus, which this week we elected a female bishop, presiding bishop of the country. And it led to a lot of the conversations, well, how is it that our denominations are so different, and yet we are the church universal? How is it that we are so different, yet we are supposed to be the same? And I was talking to somebody about that who was a Baptist. And I said, well, here's the thing. Here's the way I understand it. Is that there are objective truths in religion, and there are subjective truths in religion. So the objective truth, the one that all Christians would say is true, that Jesus died and Jesus rose again. And everything else from there basically is subjective. Lutherans believe it to be true. Well, we believe in 2 sacraments. Catholics believe in 7 sacraments. Other churches they don't have sacraments. And so we're all different in those understandings of what faith is and how it works in daily life. But the objective truth, the one truth that we all believe in, that brings us back together, that brings us back to one, is the death of Jesus. And every time we come forward, not only is Christ present with us, but Christ reminds us of how much we are loved. This is a sacrifice. This bread of life is a sacrifice that I made to show you how much I love you. And then, baptism. Well, the promises are made. Not only did I die for you, but I'm giving you new life. I'm giving you new eternal life. Life that goes on forever. That's what the gospel today is all about. Jesus is saying, this new life for you is forever. This new life for those who eat of my bread, this bread of life. But I understand that you may have been baptized. You may have been baptized. Who was baptized as a baby? How many of you remember? So you may not remember this special moment. And you may come forward and not feel the presence of God in your life. And this is what I'll say to you, is that Moses went on top of Mount Sinai and waited for God. He waited for 7 days for God to come. And Moses just sat there waiting for God to come. And he waited 7 days. So much of our life is busy. We don't have a lot of time just to relax. And if you're like me, when you do have some time to relax, you're watching TV, or you're spending time with your spouse, or you're doing something with your family, and you really don't have time to look for the presence of God, the way that Moses had 7 straight days to look for the presence of God. I would encourage you to look for God. To ask God, say, Lord, I really want to see you. I really want to feel you. I really want to feel your presence in a way that is unmistakable. And look and feel and try to be open to God in your life and how God is working in your life. And if you look, if you seek, you will find. God will say, here I am, because God is already there. Amen.